Welcome, sleepy one. I'll be your storyteller tonight. Before we begin, please like and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And now, close your eyes. Let's begin. I never thought much about the place I worked. Just another tech office in downtown Raleigh. One of those glass boxes that looked sleek and expensive from the street but felt stale and underfunded once you stepped inside. The carpet always carried a faint stench of burned coffee and reheated lunches. Someone was always microwaving leftover spaghetti, and the hum of the AC was so loud it felt like it was trying to drown out your own thoughts. My name's Amber Collins, 26 Customer Success Associate. Nothing glamorous. It paid rent, covered my health insurance, and that was enough. I showed up 5 days a week, clocked in, smiled when I had to, and tried not to think too hard about how many years could slip by that way. I grew up about 2 hours away, in a small North Carolina town where everyone knew everyone's license plate and business. When I first moved here after college, the city felt too fast, too sharp around the edges. I missed the slow predictability of home, the way you could recognize laughter before you saw who it belonged to. Still, I liked the anonymity the city gave me. I thought being unseen meant being free. At work, I blended in. I got along fine with the marketing girls, chatted about podcasts and sales leads, grabbed lunch if our schedules lined up, but mostly, I stayed on my own little island. The only constant was Derek Hall, a quiet guy from IT who sometimes offered me rides home. We weren't friends, not really, just two people sharing silence in a car that smelled faintly of pine air freshener and takeout. Derek was the type of man you'd pass 100 times without remembering his face. Same gray hoodie every day, hair always hanging just a little too long over his eyes. He barely spoke, and that worked for me. After 8 hours of fake enthusiasm, quiet was its own kind of mercy. Nothing unusual, nothing worth writing about, until the note. It was a Wednesday, middle of a week that already felt 3 days too long. I came in balancing a cup of gas station coffee, the lid already leaking a bit down my hand. My desk looked the same as always. Monitor, scattered sticky notes, a dying plant. But something was off. A folded piece of paper sat just under my keyboard. Plain white printer paper. No envelope. I frowned, setting my coffee down. The handwriting was neat, careful, almost shy. Blue ink, 4 words. You are incredibly beautiful. That was it. No name, no hearts, no clue. I let out a small, awkward laugh. Okay, I whispered to myself. That's random. It didn't feel threatening exactly, just strange. Who leaves secret admirer notes in 2025? It was the kind of thing that belonged in high school lockers, not corporate offices. I turned it over, half expecting a signature or a joke. Nothing. When I looked up, a few coworkers were chatting near the printer, their voices bouncing off the sterile white walls. None of them seemed to be watching me. I slipped the note into my bag like evidence, though I wasn't sure of what. By the time evening came, I'd mostly convinced myself it was harmless. Just someone being weirdly sweet, or maybe playing a prank. When Derek pulled up in his silver Honda Civic, I climbed in, shaking off the long day. The car smelled faintly of rain and gasoline. "You won't believe what I found today," I said, buckling my seatbelt. He glanced over briefly, eyes shadowed beneath the brim of his hoodie. "What's that?" "Somebody left me a love note." I grinned, half embarrassed. Like an actual paper note under my keyboard. 4 words. "You are incredibly beautiful. Can you believe that?" He didn't laugh, didn't even smile. The muscle in his jaw tightened. "Did you tell HR?" His voice was flat, almost too calm. I blinked. "What? No. Why would I? It's just weird, not serious." "You should report it," he said, eyes still on the road. I stared at him. "Come on, Derek. What are they going to do, send out a company-wide memo? It's probably some dumb joke." He didn't answer. His fingers clenched tighter around the steering wheel, knuckles pale against the leather. The only sound was the steady slap of the wipers cutting through a drizzle that had started somewhere along the way. I smiled faintly, trying to cut the tension. Was it you? I teased. Be honest. He didn't look at me. Silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Derek? I said softly. I'm kidding. But he just kept driving, eyes locked on the glowing red lights ahead as if the question itself had offended him. He didn't say another word the whole ride home. I brushed it off. Derek was always weird, too serious, too intense about the smallest things. Maybe he just thought I was being careless, joking about something that wasn't funny to him. I didn't think much of it. The next week, my manager, Mr. Whitman, asked me to step into a conference room. One of the HR ladies, Linda, I think, was already sitting there with a notepad and a glass of water in front of her. The air felt too still, like the room had been waiting for me. Amber, Whitman began carefully, folding his hands on the table. We're looking into a situation and we need to ask if Derek Hall has ever made you feel uncomfortable. The question hit me like cold water. Derek? I blinked, confused. No. I mean, he's kind of quiet, but no, he's never done anything weird. Linda leaned forward, her voice soft but deliberate. We're not asking you to accuse him of anything. We just need to know if he's ever crossed a line with you. Any inappropriate behavior, comments, messages? I shook my head. No, nothing like that. My voice came out too quickly. Why? What's going on? They exchanged a look, silent, loaded, the kind that makes your stomach sink before you even understand why. I'm afraid we can't share details right now, Linda said, closing her notebook. But if anything unusual happens, you come to us immediately. Understand? I nodded, but something icy settled under my ribs. That night, my monitor's glow filled my apartment as I scrolled through messages trying to distract myself. Then a Teams notification popped up. Sophie Ramirez, accounting. Did Whitman talk to you about Derek? My fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Yeah, I typed. Why? The typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Then, he used to give me rides too. Another pause. Then he started showing up at my gym, at my yoga class, everywhere. My pulse started to throb in my ears. What do you mean, everywhere? I typed. My neighbor caught him parked on my street one night, just sitting in his car, for hours. I stared at the screen, my palms slick. Please tell me you're kidding. I wish I was, she replied. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying every quiet car ride, every time Derek's eyes lingered just a little too long in the rearview mirror. The real nightmare came the following Monday. We were in the big glass conference room, 20 of us crammed in, laptops open, coffee cups sweating rings onto the table. The air smelled like nerves and burned projector bulbs. Derek, Whitman said, tapping the table, can you pull up the client report? Derek nodded silently, plugging in his USB. His hands were steady, too steady. He clicked through folders and then, by mistake, opened the wrong file. For a second, no one understood what we were seeing. The screen filled with a video, grainy, then disturbingly sharp. At first, it looked like porn, the kind that makes people awkwardly avert their eyes. But then the room froze. It was Sophie and Derek. Not really them, but close enough. Their faces, their movements, too precise, too real. Generated, artificial, but horrifyingly intimate. Grotesque scenes played out, violent, degrading. The air went out of the room. Derek lunged for the keyboard, slamming escape again and again. The computer lagged. For 5 full seconds, everyone saw everything. Then Whitman yanked the HDMI cord free. The image vanished, but the silence stayed. Security stormed in within minutes. They didn't let Derek speak as they pulled him out of the room, his face pale and blank. No one moved. You could feel the collective sickness in the air, the mix of disgust, fear, and disbelief. HR came in later, passing out papers for us to sign, confidentiality agreements, an isolated incident, they called it, handled internally, but it wasn't. A week later, I got an email. No subject line. No sender name I recognized. Just one sentence in the body. You laughed. Now you'll see how much fun it really is. Attached was a file. I couldn't open it. I wouldn't. But someone from legal did. I'll never forget the look on her face. How her color drained as she turned the screen toward me. "It's you," she whispered. I didn't need to see more. I pushed the laptop away like it was burning me. A few days later, when I thought maybe it was all over, I opened my mailbox outside my apartment. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper, plain, white, just like before. You always thought I wasn't worthy. No envelope, no stamp, just sitting there. That one broke me, because it meant he knew where I lived. From that day on, I lived like a ghost. I double-locked the door every night, drew the curtains tight. Every car parked too long outside made my pulse spike. Every shadow near my window made me stop breathing. HR said Derek had disappeared. The police weren't sharing details. No one knew if he'd been arrested, fled, or if something worse had happened to him. All I knew was that I never saw him again. But sometimes when I'm alone in my apartment, working late, I'll hear the faint ding of a notification that doesn't exist. It's quiet, almost like it's coming from inside the laptop. And I know somehow that someone's still watching, because monsters don't always hide under your bed. Sometimes they hold open the office door for you, drive you home, sit 2 desks away, waiting for the moment you realize your story stopped belonging to you a long time ago. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who got nervous about a high school reunion. But the truth is, the idea had been gnawing at me for months, like a dog worrying a bone. When the email invite hit my inbox, Westfield High, class of 2010 reunion, my stomach dropped. 10 years gone just like that. 10 years since I swore I'd never step foot in that gym again. And yet I clicked yes. Not because I wanted to see anyone, not because I missed them, but because I wanted to walk into that room and prove I wasn't the same girl they tore apart piece by piece. Back then, I was the big one. At 17, I weighed 320 pounds, and that number gave everyone permission to treat me however they pleased. Every joke, every snicker, every cruel little moo when I passed a group of boys, it all stuck. But nothing cut deeper than the day in the cafeteria when Tara Brighton, blonde, loud, queen of the cheer squad, stood on a bench and called me a land whale. The whole room erupted. Even the teachers pretended not to hear. I went home, locked myself in the bathroom, and cried until my reflection blurred. That was the day I swore I'd show them. One day. And now, here I was, 10 years later, tearing open Amazon packages with trembling hands. Spanx, hair extensions, press-on nails. I'd spent the last year on a drug that was supposed to change everything. The commercials called it a miracle. The doctors called it semi-glutide. Online people had another name, the cheat code. I'd always said I'd never stick a needle in myself. But after years of losing and gaining the same 40 pounds, I gave in. For the first time in my life, the weight actually stayed off. By June, I was down 85 pounds. My cheekbones looked sharp enough to cut glass. My collarbones jutted out like I'd borrowed them from someone else's body. For the first time, I could put on a dress and not cry. The night of the reunion, I parked outside Westfield High and stared at the building that used to be my personal hell. The gym windows glowed gold against the dark. I could hear the faint pulse of music, laughter spilling into the night. My palms were slick on the steering wheel. "Get it together, Laya," I muttered. "You didn't go through all this for nothing." I pulled down the visor mirror, fixed my lipstick, and stepped out. My heels clicked on the pavement, loud, deliberate, a sound I'd once been terrified to make. When I pushed open the gym doors, I felt it instantly. The shift in air, the pause in conversation. Heads turned. Mouths fell open. No joke. Tara Brighton's jaw actually dropped. "Laya?" she gasped, clutching her necklace like she'd seen a ghost. "Still on Earth?" I smiled, slow and syrupy. "Oh no, honey, I fly now. Her fake laugh was the sweetest thing I'd ever heard. Suddenly, people who never looked at me twice back then were circling me, smiling, hugging, pretending nostalgia. The same ones who whispered and snickered now wanted selfies and my Instagram handle. That's when I saw him. Ryan Blake, my old crush, football captain, the guy I once wrote 10 pages about in my diary. He looked even better than I remembered. Crisp shirt, close-cropped hair, that same half-smirk that could melt steel. "Wow," he said, eyes running over me like a slow drag of heat. He handed me a drink, ice clinking. You're a whole different person." I took the glass, smiled faintly. I burned the old version. He laughed, low and surprised, and somehow we just clicked. Conversation flowed like it never had before. Easy, teasing, familiar, in all the wrong ways. By the end of the night, I was in his downtown loft. Minimalist furniture, abstract art, the faint smell of cologne and something richer, amber maybe. A sleek coffee machine sat on the counter like a tiny spaceship, gleaming under soft track lighting. And as I stood there, heels in my hand, watching him pour wine, I caught my reflection in the glass, someone I almost recognized but not quite. We were kissing, laughing, tugging at each other's clothes, when suddenly my stomach clenched like a fist. The room tilted, the floor breathing under me. I barely managed to shove Ryan away before I hit the carpet, retching so violently I thought something inside me had split open. My vision tunneled. His voice sounded far away, panicked, shouting for help. "Laya, Jesus, somebody call 911. His face was the last thing I saw before everything went black. When I came to, the world smelled like antiseptic and metal. A fluorescent light hummed overhead. There was an IV taped to my arm, my throat dry and raw. "You're okay, honey," a nurse said gently. "Dehydration, malnutrition, side effects from those injections probably." I blinked, trying to piece together what she meant, when a voice rasped beside me. "Guess we've got more in common than I thought." I turned my head, and there he was, Ryan. On the next stretcher over, shirt half open, IV line snaking from his arm. He looked wrecked, pale and trembling, but somehow he still managed a weak grin. "I threw up 3 times last week from eating a salad," he said. "But hey, anything to impress, right?" We both laughed, quiet, shaky, embarrassed. Relief and shame mixed in my chest like oil and water. We promised each other we'd quit, start over, be normal again. But the weight came back fast, like it had been waiting behind a curtain the whole time, smug and patient. Neither of us could handle it. That's when we found the group, a hidden corner of Reddit invite only, buried under layers of code and paranoia. They called themselves the Shining Circle. These people weren't just users. They were chemists, hackers, black market traders. They weren't buying prescriptions. They were making them. Ryan got us in. The first package arrived in a plain black box. No label, no return address. Inside, small glass vials wrapped in silver foil. Just one note, 1 shot per week, no refunds. And it worked. For a while, it worked perfectly. No nausea, no dehydration. My skin glowed. My body looked sculpted, unreal. My Instagram exploded. Followers, sponsorship offers, comments like "your goals." Ryan became obsessed. He weighed himself 3 times a day, skipped work, stared at mirrors like they held secrets. Sometimes mid-kiss, he'd stop just to check his reflection, breathing hard. Then came the deaths. A girl on the forum, screen name Vitaglow, collapsed in a tanning salon. Heart failure. The autopsy found amphetamines mixed into her vial. I panicked. Ryan didn't. "She was probably taking other crap," he said, brushing it off. People exaggerate, but soon he wasn't sleeping. He said he heard whispering, voices that came from the bathroom vent calling him by name. His hands shook, his heart raced for no reason. Then one morning, he collapsed on the treadmill. That's when I learned he hadn't just been using the drug. He'd been doubling the doses and selling under the username that had started it all. Ghost Newton. The last time I saw Ryan, we fought. I begged him to stop. I told him he was scaring me. He screamed that I didn't understand, that he'd rather die than go back to being ordinary. Then he slammed the door and was gone. A week later, so was he. The police said there was no sign of foul play. His apartment was spotless, eerily empty, like he'd erased himself. The only things left were a blood-stained towel and an emptied crypto wallet. They asked if I knew where he might have gone. I said maybe he'd run off with some model, but I knew better. Ghost Newton had taken him. I spiraled. I ate like I was trying to fill the hole he left behind. Ice cream, fried chicken, anything warm and greasy enough to drown the guilt. My body swelled fast, angry, like it hated me for every bite. Almost a year passed before I saw him again. Not on the news, not in a morgue, at a Florida resort buffet. I was reaching for a plate when I spotted him waddling through the crowd, sweat-soaked linen shirt clinging to a body that barely resembled the man I'd known. His face was round, cheeks flushed, tray piled high with chocolate donuts. But it was Ryan. "Laya," he said, breathless, eyes wide. We just stared across the buffet line, frozen. Finally, he shuffled closer, tray trembling in his hands. "Still shining, huh?" he said with that old crooked smile. I gave a small broken laugh. "Guess so." He chuckled, handed me a donut and said, "Me too." We sat by the pool that afternoon, eating in silence. He told me he'd faked everything. The blood, the empty wallet, his disappearance. He'd gone underground when members of the circle started dying. One girl, he said, voice low. She literally melted, skin necrosis, her body just dissolved. I stared at him horrified. He only shrugged, frosting smeared across his lips. "Maybe this is who we were always meant to be," he said, patting his massive stomach, fat and full of lies. The sun pressed down hot and merciless. I looked at my reflection in the pool, bloated, stretched, skin glistening with sweat, and for the first time in years, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because maybe, just maybe, he was right. Maybe this was the only truth left. I never thought I'd be one of those people who looks back at their 20s with a knot in their stomach. Most people talk about those years like they're golden. Cheap apartments, late-night drives, friends who feel like family. For me, those years are the ones I'd rather forget. My name's Julia. I'm 26 now. But this started when I was 21, when I had nothing figured out. I dropped out of college after one miserable semester because tuition crushed me. And instead of chasing the journalism dream I once had, I wound up working shifts at a diner on the edge of town. It was the kind of place that smelled like burnt bacon, no matter what time you walked in. The regulars left quarter tips like it was a joke, like they were testing how much dignity I could afford to lose before breaking. I lived in a shoebox apartment off Cedar Street, peeling paint, a radiator that screamed all night, and neighbors who fought so loud I didn't even need Netflix. Still, I kept telling myself it was temporary. I'd save up, go back to school, get out of Ohio. That was the plan. Then came the reunion. It wasn't an official one, just a Facebook event someone threw together. A bunch of people I used to know decided we should all meet up at a bar one Friday night. I scrolled right past it at first. High school hadn't exactly been my golden era. But then I saw her name, Rachel Miller, and my stomach dropped. Rachel had been my best friend through middle school and most of high school. We were inseparable, the kind of girls who shared clothes, whispered secrets, and made big plans about leaving town and never looking back. Then junior year happened and something changed. She got mixed up with a new crowd, the type that thought drinking in the cemetery counted as personality. I tried to keep up, but she'd started treating cruelty like currency, and I couldn't afford it. By senior year, we barely spoke. Still, seeing her name again stirred something in me. Nostalgia, curiosity, maybe just loneliness. Against my better judgment, I clicked, going. The night of the meetup, the bar was packed. Dim lights, sticky floors, the air thick with cheap beer and cologne. Everyone looked older, heavier, a little frayed around the edges. I was halfway through a watered-down rum and coke when I saw her. Rachel. She hadn't changed much. Same long dark hair, same sharp smile that made you feel like she knew a secret you didn't. She spotted me right away. "Jules," she said, eyes wide. No one had called me that in years. "Rachel," I said, smiling before I could stop myself. "Wow, it's been forever." She hugged me, tight, too tight. For a second I smelled her shampoo, that same citrusy scent she used to steal from her mom's bathroom cabinet. And just like that, it was like we were 16 again, skipping class and talking about boys we'd never actually talked to. We spent most of the night catching up. She told me she was renting a little house not far from where we grew up, working part-time at a boutique and doing some online freelance gigs. She laughed when she said freelance like it was a joke, like she didn't take herself too seriously. She asked about me and I told her the truth, that I was stuck waitressing, barely scraping by. Her eyes softened, her voice dropping. "You always deserved more, Jules. You were the smart one." That line hit harder than I expected. No one had called me smart in a long time. By the end of the night, I was a little drunk, a little dizzy with nostalgia. So when Rachel asked, "Want to hang out sometime? Just like old times?" I didn't hesitate. I said yes. At first it felt good. We started seeing each other once or twice a week, grabbing coffee, driving aimlessly around the outskirts of town, talking until way too late in her dimly lit living room. She had this way of making the mundane feel electric again, like we were still kids with our whole lives ahead of us. But there was always an edge to her, a sharpness under the charm. The way her eyes lingered too long on people, the bite in her jokes, the uncanny way she always seemed to know more than she should. One night, she leaned back on her couch, a lazy smile playing on her lips, and said, "You know, I always thought we'd run this town someday." And for the first time in years, I couldn't tell if she was kidding. "Like nobody could touch us," she added, her smile curving just slightly. Half a joke, half a dare. I laughed, trying to keep it light. "You always thought we'd be Bonnie and Clyde." "Maybe we still could be," she said, voice soft but serious enough to make my stomach tighten. I told myself it was just nostalgia talking, a joke, but with Rachel it was always hard to tell. About 3 weeks into our reunion, she asked me for a favor. "Can you drive me to this guy's house?" she said casually one afternoon. "It's just across town." "Sure," I said, without thinking twice. We drove in silence, windows down, the air heavy with summer heat and the smell of tar from the road. When we pulled up, the place looked abandoned. Dark, run down, windows boarded over, weeds taller than the porch steps. "Just wait here," she said, already unbuckling her seatbelt. I watched her disappear into the shadows. 10 minutes later, she came back with a black backpack slung over her shoulder. She tossed it in the back seat and said flatly, "Drive." I didn't ask. I should have, but I didn't. Later, when she went to use the bathroom at my apartment, curiosity got the better of me. I unzipped the bag just enough to see inside. Cash, stacks of it. My breath caught. When she came out, she saw me. Her eyes changed in an instant, cold, calculating, like a predator deciding whether to pounce. Then she smiled, too sweet. "Don't worry about it, Jules," she said, voice light. "Some people owe me, that's all." She paused, tilting her head. "You want in, though? I could use a partner." I shook my head, heart pounding. "I can't. I don't want to be involved." She just smirked. "That's what you always say. But you're still here." And she wasn't wrong. Weeks turned into months. And somehow, I couldn't pull away. She had this gravity, this way of making me feel seen, needed. She'd buy me dinner when I was broke, slip me gas money, even cover my rent once. But every kindness came with a quiet sting. "See, I take care of you," she'd say with a grin. "That's what friends do, and someday maybe you'll take care of me." I told myself I wasn't really involved. I was just her ride, her listener, her old friend. But deep down, I knew I was part of something I didn't understand. The breaking point came one night when she showed up at my door, shaking wild-eyed. "Can I stay here just for tonight?" she panted. I never imagined I'd look back at my middle school years and realize the best friend I made back then would one day become my worst nightmare. I met Lena Carter when I was 12. Funny, bold, reckless in that magnetic way that made everyone want to sit beside her at lunch. I was the quiet one, content to listen more than I spoke, but somehow we clicked. By high school, we were inseparable. She called me her sister, and for a long time I believed her. We shared everything: clothes, secrets, plans for the future. Then my 20s came, and so did the diagnosis. A condition that slowly took pieces of me I didn't know I'd miss. I started using a wheelchair most of the time, but at home, when I didn't feel like hauling myself into it, I'd crawl or slide around. It wasn't glamorous, but I adapted. I tried to keep my independence intact no matter what. Lena stayed, or at least I thought she did. She'd grin, wrap an arm around me and say, "Girl, you and me against the world. Doesn't matter what happens, I've got you." And I believed her. So when she told me one evening over takeout that she and her boyfriend needed a place to stay, I didn't even hesitate. "Of course," I said, "your family." Looking back, I should have thought harder. The day they moved in, I made one request. Just one. "Lena, please," I told her as we carried boxes inside. "No big dogs in here, okay? I love animals, but if a dog knocks me over when I'm not in the chair or comes barreling down the stairs, it could be bad, really bad." She waved a hand, smiling like it was nothing. "Relax. I'd never do that to you. You know me. No dogs. Promise." And I trusted her. God, I was stupid. 3 weeks later, they brought home a pit bull. Not a calm, trained one. A hyper, unneutered ball of muscle that tore through the house like a living storm. I like dogs, but this one was chaos on 4 legs. "Lena," I said that first night, watching it skid across the hallway, leap onto the couch and send a cup flying. She sipped her wine lazily. "She's sweet. She'll calm down. Don't worry." Her boyfriend chuckled, tossing the dog a toy. "She's just a puppy. She'll grow out of it." But she didn't. Every time I left my wheelchair to move across the floor, that dog was there. Jumping, licking, pushing. No sense of boundaries. No training. And Lena's idea of discipline was half-heartedly yelling, "Down! Stop!" from across the room while scrolling on her phone. Then came the morning that changed everything. I was late for class, rushing to the backyard where I kept my wheelchair under the deck. The smell hit me before I saw it. Sharp, acidic, unmistakable. My stomach turned cold. The chair was soaked, not with water, but with dog piss. It dripped from the wheels, pooled in the seat cushion. For a second, I couldn't breathe. That wheelchair wasn't just a chair, it was my legs, my freedom. And now it was drenched in filth. "Lena!" I screamed up toward the deck. She appeared, hair messy, clutching her coffee. "What's up?" "Your dog pissed all over my chair," I snapped, my voice cracking. She blinked, barely reacting. "Really? Damn. I didn't notice. Sorry." That was it. Sorry. No urgency, no guilt, no offer to help. So I dragged myself through the wet grass, grabbed the hose and started cleaning it while she just stood there watching. I climbed into it, still damp, the smell clinging to my clothes as I rolled away. The humiliation sat like a fire in my chest. I couldn't even cry. Things only spiraled from there. Trash piled up in corners. Lena and her boyfriend never took it out, and the dog tore through the bags at night. One evening, I came home and found garbage scattered across the stairs, rotting food, soaked paper, scraps of takeout containers. I rolled right into it before realizing what it was. The stench hit hard, sour and greasy like decay. I wanted to scream, but instead, I grabbed a marker and wrote across the fridge in thick black letters, "Clean up the damn trash in the hallway." The next morning, Lena stormed into the kitchen, slamming her mug down. "What the hell is this?" she snapped, pointing at the note. "It's the truth," I said coldly. "Do you know how it feels to crawl through rotten garbage because you two are too lazy to take out the trash?" I hissed, voice raw. I could feel the grit from the stairs still under my nails. She crossed her arms like I'd insulted her for fun. "You don't have to talk to me like that," she said, all offended. "That's rude as hell. Rude. Rude is me dragging my body through dog—" I almost said the word, but the taste of it made me clamp my jaw. "And trash juice because you can't do the bare minimum." My throat tightened. The memory of soggy paper and something that used to be food clinging to my knees made my skin crawl. She didn't flinch. To Lena, none of that mattered. The problem wasn't the filth, it was me calling her out. Then there was the bathroom. Her hair, long, black as a spill of ink, clogged the drain every single time. After each shower, it would snake across the tiles, drape over the faucet, cling to the tub like a second shadow. I'd step in and find it wrapped around my ankles. "Lena, please clean it," I'd say through gritted teeth. She'd grin and flip her hair like an apology, "Oops, forgot," and leave me standing for half my shower, fishing it off my skin until I gagged. The water stung my eyes. The hair stuck to me, slimy and humiliating. While I was peeling hair off my legs and wiping urine off my chair, her boyfriend lost his job. Bills stopped getting paid. Electricity, internet, gas. One by one, the household conveniences dimmed. "I'll give you my share next week," he'd promise every week, voice slack and rehearsed. I started taking photos of receipts, stacking them on my phone like proof that I wasn't imagining any of it, that I wasn't the crazy one. The tension in the house wound tighter each day, a wire ready to snap. Then Lena's mother arrived. One afternoon I walked in and she was simply there, as if she'd always belonged, sitting in the guest room, smiling with that too wide, permanently pleased mouth. "Oh, don't mind me," she said cheerfully. "I'll just be staying here for a little while." Little while stretched into months, 4 of them. No rent, no help, just another body consuming space and food and patience. She lingered in doorways, left hair in the sink, and rearranged things like she owned the place. The breaking point came the day I told them I was leaving. I tried to be calm. I told Lena I was moving out and that I'd be taking my bed with me. Her face folded. "Wait, where's my mom supposed to sleep then? You're seriously going to do that to her? That's cold, girl." Her voice was small but sharp. I laughed, a sound that tasted like iron. "Cold? That's my bed. My house. Your mom doesn't pay a dime. She's lucky I didn't kick her out months ago." That snapped something in her mother. "You ungrateful," she screamed, words clawing at the air, and then her hand slammed across my face before I could even process the movement. The impact knocked me from my chair onto the hardwood. Pain exploded through my cheek, a white-hot flare that made the room tilt. I tried to scramble, fingers scrabbling for the floor, but she was on me in seconds, straddling, slapping, punching, her nails raking my forearms, my mouth filled with the metallic taste of blood. "Stop, Mom, stop!" Lena shrieked, but her shout didn't come for me. It was a bargain, a negotiation. "Don't press charges, she didn't mean it." Her concern was a single, cold calculation. "Stop. You'll go to jail for hitting a disabled person." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Call an ambulance." Just the possibility of jail. That was her worry, not my face slick with blood, not the way my skin burned where her nails had scored it. I curled around my head like that would make the blows stop. "Stop," I begged, but the words floated uselessly in the room. Her mother ranted, a wild animal's rant. "Let me at her. She deserves it." Lena hauled her back, dragging, and in that moment I crawled, slow and shaking, into my room. My hands fumbled with the lock. My fingers felt enormous and clumsy. I slammed the door, locked it, and the shaking in my hands didn't stop as I dialed 911. They came. The police shoved her mother into the squad car while she flailed and screamed, still trying to reach me through the window. At the ER, my face was a nightmare, swollen, split, bruised, barely recognizable in the pale hospital light. I sat on that plastic chair feeling like an animal in a cage, skin prickling with shame and the hot sting of humiliation. And who showed up at the triage window? Lena, eyes enormous, and her boyfriend hovering behind her. "Please," Lena begged, voice thick, hands clasped. "Don't press charges. She didn't mean it. You know how my mom is." Her words were syrup and poison. For some reason, maybe old loyalty, maybe the exhaustion of constant fights. I agreed. I told the officer I didn't want to press charges. Then the regret started to hollow me out, a slow gnawing I feel every time I blink. I regret it every single day. I left not long after. I stuffed my clothes into bags, folded what dignity I could find into the corners of my suitcase, and hauled my wheelchair into the trunk. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't argue. I left in silence like a theft. They never paid me back for anything. The landlord billed me for the damages, scratched walls, stained tiles, the lingering stink of dog urine that clung to the place like a memory. I refused to pay for the mess they made of my home. I wouldn't finance their chaos. The house lives in my mind like a bruise, not haunted by ghosts, but by betrayal that sits heavy and pulsing. A month after I left, my phone lit up with one last message from Lena. "You didn't have to make such a big deal out of it." I stared at the screen, heat coiling under my skin, and my fingers moved before my brain could catch up. I typed back, every letter a small, cold flame. "Rot in hell. Don't ever contact me again, or I swear you'll regret it." Then I blocked her number. I never saw her again. The last I heard, Lena, her boyfriend, and that woman who beat me moved in with an aunt. Poor woman. She has no idea what's waiting for her. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where everybody knew your last name and gossip traveled faster than the school bus. Most of the houses had peeling paint, porches with sagging swings, and lawns that smelled like cut grass and rust. Our street was lined with old oaks, so massive their roots split the sidewalks, making the concrete buckle like waves. I was 8 then, and my favorite thing in the world was riding my bike after school. It wasn't much, a hand-me-down blue Schwinn with one crooked handlebar and a bell that stuck half the time. But to me, it felt like flying. When the wind hit my face and the tires hummed against the pavement, I could almost pretend I was somewhere else. My parents had rules, the kind that felt like they were carved into stone. My mom especially. "Don't you cross that street without me or your dad, you hear?" she'd say, pointing with the same finger she used when I tracked mud into the kitchen. And I listened. Always. I never crossed. I just rode up and down our side of the block until every crack in the sidewalk, every mailbox, every barking dog became part of my little world. But there was one house I always noticed. It sat near the end of the street with a long driveway, wide enough for 2 cars, and a leaning white fence that tilted just a little to the left. I don't remember the first time I really looked at it, but I remember the day I saw him. It was one of those damp spring afternoons when the air smelled like wet asphalt and worms after rain. The man was standing at the end of his driveway, not quite on the sidewalk, just close enough that I could see the shape of his face beneath the brim of his brown hat. "Hey, kid," he called, tipping the hat slightly. I slowed down, my bike wobbling under me. "Hey," I said back, my voice small but steady. He nodded at my bike. "Nice ride you got there, bet it's fast, huh?" I grinned a little, proud despite myself. "Yeah, kinda." He chuckled, low and warm. "Bet you could beat me to the corner if you tried." I shook my head. "My mom says no racing in the street." "Smart mom," he said with a faint smile. One day, though. After that, I started to expect him. Most afternoons he'd be there. Same hat, same spot, like the end of that driveway was his post. He never stepped onto the sidewalk, never moved closer. just stood there and talked to me across that invisible boundary. "How's third grade treating you?" he'd ask, hands tucked in his pockets. "Fine," I'd reply. "Got a favorite subject?" "Recess," I'd say every time, and he'd laugh like it was brand new. He noticed little things too. "That your little brother I saw out front yesterday?" he asked once. I blinked, surprised. I'd never mentioned my brother to him. Maybe he'd just seen us playing tag in the yard. "Yeah," I said slowly. "That's him." Another day, he nodded toward our driveway. "Your dad got a new car, huh? Looks sharp." I hadn't told him that either, but the old Buick had been swapped for a Ford, so maybe he'd just noticed. People paid attention to that kind of thing in small towns. It didn't seem strange then. Over time, I started to like seeing him there. I'd ring my bell when I passed, and he'd tip his hat in greeting. Sometimes he told me stories, the kind old men tell when they've got nowhere else to be. About a dog that always brought the same slipper back no matter where he threw it, or a robin that landed on his fence every morning at the same hour. They were harmless, quiet stories. Simple. Weeks went by like that. Then one afternoon he wasn't there. I rode past his house slow, eyes darting to the driveway, half expecting him to appear. But it was empty. Curtains drawn tight. Even the yard looked still. I circled the block and came back again, but nothing. The next day, same thing. And the day after that. By the fifth day, the absence felt wrong, like a song that stopped before the last note. That's when I saw her. A woman in a faded sundress was standing in the backyard, watering plants by the fence. Her hair was pulled back, her shoulders thin and freckled under the sunlight. The garden hose hissed softly, and the smell of wet earth drifted into the air. I slowed my bike, hovering by the curb, watching her for a moment before she noticed me. I stopped at the corner, watching her from the safety of my side of the street, too nervous to call out. She didn't see me, just kept tending to her plants, the slow rhythm of her watering can mixing with the buzz of cicadas. After a few minutes, I turned my bike around and rode home, but the thought of her lingered. A few days later, I worked up the nerve. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I glanced toward my house first. No one was watching from the window. Then I pushed off, pedaling hard, my tires spitting tiny bits of gravel as I shot across the forbidden street for the first time in my life. The driveway felt longer up close. The air was heavy with the smell of wet soil and fertilizer. When I reached the end, the woman looked up, startled but not unfriendly. "Well, hello there," she said, wiping her hands on her sundress. "What are you doing over here?" I shifted awkwardly on my bike seat, my throat dry. I used to talk to the man who stood here. He wore a hat. He said hi to me every day." She frowned, tilting her head a little. "A man with a hat?" "Yeah," I said quickly. "He knew my name. He told me stories sometimes. He said maybe one day we'd race to the corner." Her expression changed, softer, but in a way that made my stomach twist. It wasn't comfort. It was pity. She put the watering can down slowly and took a step closer. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "that sounds like my husband, but he passed away last year." I blinked, not understanding. "No," I stammered. "He was just here. He said hi every day." She shook her head, the lines around her mouth tightening. "My husband's name was Walter. He loved this yard. He always wore his hat when he stood outside." Her hand came up to touch her cheek, tracing from ear to mouth. "But he had a scar, right here. He got it when he was a boy." My stomach clenched. The man I'd seen, he didn't have a scar. His face had been smooth. Do you have a picture?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She hesitated, studying me, then disappeared inside. I waited, straddling my bike, heart thudding. The air felt thick, like it was holding its breath. A minute later, she came back holding a framed photo. "This was him," she said softly, offering it to me. "In the picture, A man stood smiling in front of the same house, hat tipped back on his head. It was him, the hat, the smile, everything, except for the pale, jagged scar that ran across his cheek like a thin white crack. I stared at it until my mouth went dry. The man I saw didn't have that, I whispered. Her eyebrows drew together. Honey, nobody's been standing in that driveway. I've been here since summer. If there was someone out here, I'd know. I nodded automatically, backing away. Thanks, I muttered, my voice shaking. My hands slipped on the handlebars as I pedaled off. The bike wobbled under me, gravel snapping under the tires. By the time I got home, my chest felt like I'd swallowed ice. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying his laugh, the way he'd said my name, the sound of his voice mixing with the creak of the floorboards. A week later, something happened. I've never been able to shake. It was raining lightly that night, the kind of soft, steady drizzle that tapped gently against my window. The air smelled like wet leaves and asphalt. I woke up suddenly, heart already pounding, though I didn't know why. Then I heard it. A voice, calling my name. At first I thought it was part of a dream, the echo of something half-remembered. But then it came again, clearer this time. Kid. Low, familiar. The same warmth in it as before, but stretched thin, like it had traveled a long way through the rain. I froze. The covers were pulled up to my chin, my breath shallow. Kid, I screamed. My mom came running, her footsteps thudding down the hall. What's wrong? She gasped, flipping on the light. Someone's outside, I said, pointing toward the window. He's calling my name. She went straight to the blinds and yanked them open. Nothing, just the slick sheen of rain on the grass, the dark outline of the oak tree swaying in the wind. My dad appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. What's going on? Someone was outside, my mom said quietly, but I could hear the disbelief in her voice. My dad frowned, grabbed the flashlight, and went out into the yard while I stood trembling by the window. I watched the beam move across the wet lawn, cutting through the rain. After a few minutes, he came back in. Nobody's out there, he said firmly. Everything's locked up tight. But I knew what I'd heard. I knew that voice. Years went by. I stopped riding past that house, stopped talking about it. When we moved away during my sophomore year of high school, I thought I'd left it behind. But I never really did. Even now, as an adult, whenever I drive through that old neighborhood, my hands tighten on the wheel as I near that corner. The house looks different now. Fresh paint, new cars in the driveway. But I still see it. The brim of a hat, a faint smile, a quiet wave from the end of the drive. And sometimes when it rains at night and the windows rattle just right, I swear I can still hear my name being called from outside. I was 11 the first time I knew something was wrong in that house. Back then, it was just me, my mom, and my little brother, Jamie. We lived in a small rental on the edge of a quiet town in Ohio. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, a cramped kitchen, a sagging front porch, but it was what Mom could afford after the divorce. The street itself was harmless. Kids rode bikes through summer evenings, neighbors drank beer on their lawns, and the biggest excitement was when the school bus ran late. But the house had a way of making you feel watched. Mom always brushed it off. It's just old, she'd say, rubbing her temples after work. Built in the 50s, creaky as hell. Houses settle, pipes groan, floors expand, that's all. She had an explanation for everything, but even at 11, I knew not every sound that came from inside those walls belonged to the house. Some of them felt different. We moved in at the start of September just as school began. Mom was tough, sharp-tongued, tired, but fierce about taking care of us. Jamie was 7, wild and messy, always talking to himself, while his action figures clashed on the living room rug. I didn't hate the house at first. It smelled like dust and mothballs, but it had a backyard, and the landlord let us keep our cat, Tiger. That alone made it a win for me. What stuck with me most was the neighbor. The day we moved in, a man in his late 50s shuffled over from 2 doors down. His name was Walter, but everyone called him Walt. Friendly enough, with sunburned cheeks and a limp that made his steps uneven. "If you ever need tools or help with the yard, just holler," he said. Then he looked right at me. "You kids be careful in that place. Funny things happen there." Mom laughed politely. "Well, that's comforting," she said. But Walt didn't laugh. He just stared past her, right at our front door, as if remembering something he wished he hadn't. That first night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck to the ceiling, listening to the wind rattle the trees outside my window. Shadows shifted and swayed across the walls, bending with the branches. But one shadow didn't move. It sat in the corner, right beside my toy chest. At first, I told myself it was just a pile of clothes, or maybe the big stuffed bear my aunt had given me. But when I blinked, just once, the shape was gone. A coldness seeped into me then, not the kind from an open window, but the kind that settles deep in your bones. I pulled the blanket over my head and whispered a prayer for sleep. When I woke the next morning, my toy chest stood wide open. I never left it open. Mom would yell if toys spilled out. I shut it quickly before she came in, but deep down I knew I hadn't touched it. A few weeks later, Jamie started saying strange things. We were eating cereal before school when he said it, casual as anything. "I don't like the man in the closet." Mom froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. "What man, honey?" "The one who talks to me," Jamie said, crunching his cereal like it was no big deal. "He whispers, but I can't hear what he says." Mom shot me a quick look, "Don't encourage this," and turned back to him. "Sweetie, closets don't have men in them. You just had a dream." But I saw his face. He wasn't lying. His voice had that quiet seriousness kids get when they're sure of something. That night I stayed awake listening. The house settled, the pipes sighed, and then I heard it. Soft, low, coming from Jamie's room. A whisper, steady and patient, just beneath the sound of his breathing. A dragging sound, slow, deliberate, scraped across my bedroom floor, like fingernails raking over wood. It stopped right beside my bed. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I just squeezed my eyes shut so tight my head hurt, and I must have passed out from sheer terror. When morning came, sunlight spilled across the floor, and that's when I saw them. Deep, fresh scratches carved into the wood, right next to where I slept. I ran to show Mom, my hands shaking. Look at this," I said. She frowned. "You must have dragged something sharp, or maybe you moved the dresser around." "I didn't," I swore. "Mom, I didn't touch it." Her voice hardened. "Quit making up stories." But I wasn't making them up. It kept happening. Some nights, whispers leaked from my closet like a radio turned too low just below hearing. Other nights, Jamie would scream, and when I ran into his room, he'd be sitting up in bed, pointing at the corner, eyes wide. "He's there! He's there!" he'd cry. I never saw anyone, but I felt him. That crawling pressure at the back of your neck when someone's watching and doesn't blink. One night in December, I woke to find my door wide open. I always shut it. Always. The hallway light Mom left on was out. Dead dark. Then came the footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Moving down the hall toward me. They stopped outside my door. The hinges creaked. A tall, dark figure leaned in. Just the head. No features. Just a black shape darker than the dark itself. I wanted to scream for Mom, but my throat locked up. I shut my eyes. When I opened them again, the door was closed. In the morning, Mom swore she never came into my room. After one especially bad night, Jamie and I told her everything, the man, the whispers, the footsteps. For the first time, I saw her face go pale. Without a word, she lit a candle and walked through each room, whispering a prayer her mother had taught her. The air smelled like wax and smoke. For a while, things calmed down, but not for long. One afternoon, I came home before Mom. I sat on the couch doing homework when something slammed upstairs. My heart jumped. The sound came from my room, the toy chest. Nobody else was home. My pencil slipped from my fingers. I waited, listening. Then slowly, I got up and walked down the hall. My bedroom door was wide open. The toy chest was closed, but my toys were scattered everywhere like someone had dug through them. I backed away, trembling, and sat outside on the front steps until Mom came home. When I told her, she sighed. Probably the cat. But Tiger was curled up in the laundry basket, fast asleep. Not long after that, I was walking home from school when Walt caught up to me, cigarette dangling from his lips, his breath clouding in the cold. His eyes looked sharper than usual. "You seeing things in there yet?" he asked. I stopped. "What do you mean?" He took a drag, flicked the ash into the snow. "That house has got a history. Last family didn't stay long. Kids said they saw someone at night, closet doors opening on their own. Same stuff you're talking about, ain't it?" I couldn't answer. My throat went dry. He sighed. "Sometimes places hold on to people. Bad people. You just stay sharp, kid." The worst night came in January. Snow piled high against the windows and the wind screamed around the house. Mom was working late, so it was just me and Jamie. He fell asleep on the couch watching cartoons. I carried him to bed, tucked him in, and went back to my room. I don't know how long I slept before the sound came again. Those nails, dragging slow across the floor. I opened my eyes. The tall shadow was crouched beside my bed, its head tilted as if listening to my heartbeat. I couldn't scream, couldn't even swallow. The thing stood up smooth and silent and backed into my closet. The door shut softly behind it. When I finally found the strength to move, I bolted for Jamie's room. He was awake, crying, whispering over and over. He's my friend now. Years later, after we moved out, I asked Mom straight out, "Did you ever see anything in that house?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Sometimes," she said quietly. "I'd wake up and see a shadow standing in my doorway. I didn't tell you kids because I didn't want to scare you. But yes, there was something there. And I think it was a man. Someone who used to live there." She never said more. But I knew. Jamie knew. Even now, grown up, far from that place. When the house is quiet and the dark feels too still, I swear I still hear it. That same, slow, patient sound. Nails dragging across the floor, like an old friend, waiting to be remembered. I hadn't seen Kevin in almost 12 years when he suddenly reached out. Back in high school, we'd been inseparable. Football games under the floodlights, midnight Taco Bell runs, sleepovers where we'd stay up talking about music, girls, and all those wild dreams teenagers have when they think the world's just waiting to be conquered. But after graduation, life split us in opposite directions. I stayed behind, took classes at community college, and landed a job at a construction supply company. Kevin, though, he bolted, said he couldn't breathe in our small Ohio town anymore. Word was, he drifted down south, bounced between jobs, maybe got into trouble, though nobody really knew what kind. So when I got a Facebook message from him out of nowhere, it felt like a ghost had reached out. "Hey man, long time. You free to grab a beer this weekend?" I stared at the message for 10 whole minutes. Kevin wasn't the kind to check in. After 12 years of radio silence, I figured he'd either forgotten me or decided I wasn't worth remembering. But something in me flickered. Old loyalty, nostalgia maybe. We'd been close once, closer than brothers. "Yeah," I finally typed back. "Let's catch up." We picked a bar on the edge of town, one of those dimly lit places that always smelled like spilled Bud Light and fryer grease. When I walked in Saturday night, Kevin was already there, sitting in a corner booth by the window. The years had carved him up. He was thinner now, with sharp cheekbones and tired, sunken eyes. His hairline had crept back, and his skin was pale like he hadn't seen daylight in months. But when he grinned and stood up, that same boyish, lopsided smile from high school flashed through, and for a second, he looked exactly like the kid I used to know. "Holy shit, man," he said, pulling me into a hug. "It's been forever." "No kidding," I laughed, clapping his shoulder. "Thought you fell off the map." We ordered beers, wings, and fries. For a while it was easy, like time had folded back on itself. We swapped old stories, laughed about teachers we'd hated, teased each other about the girls we used to crush on. The jukebox hummed in the background, the neon lights buzzing faintly above us. Then, somewhere between the second round and last call, his tone changed. "You ever see things at night?" he asked quietly, leaning in. "Like when you're half asleep." I frowned. "What kind of things?" He hesitated, eyes darting toward the window. "Like shadows. In your room. Or somebody standing in the corner watching you." I let out a nervous chuckle. "You mean like night terrors? Sleep paralysis or something?" Kevin shook his head slowly. "No, man. I mean real people. People who shouldn't be there." I stared at him, trying to read if he was joking. "Kev, you okay? You on something?" He laughed, but it came out dry and forced. "Nah, I'm good. Just been seeing stuff lately, that's all. Figured I'd ask you, see if it's just me." The rest of the night spiraled into something uneasy. He kept circling back, talking about noises in the walls, things moving just out of sight, the feeling of being followed. Whenever I tried to steer the conversation to his life, the last decade, he dodged it. All he'd say was, "Been moving around, couldn't stay in one place too long." When we finally stepped out into the cold night, the parking lot was slick with rain. I went to shake his hand, but Kevin grabbed my arm instead. His grip was tight, his skin ice cold. "Come by tomorrow," he said. His voice had dropped to a whisper. "I'm staying at the old Miller house out by the woods." He looked right at me. "You know the one." I froze. Of course I knew it. Everyone did. The Miller house had been abandoned since we were kids. People used to dare each other to break into the Miller house at night, but no one ever did. It was two sagging stories of rotted wood and busted windows, the walls tattooed with graffiti and strangled by vines. Kids swore it was haunted, said you could see faces in the upstairs window when the moon was full. "Why the hell are you staying there?" I asked. "Cheap," Kevin said, smirking. "And quiet. Come by tomorrow. We'll hang out." He grinned like we were 17 again. Just like old times. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. Maybe I wanted to know what the years had done to him, or what he'd done to himself. The next night I drove out there. The road cracked and narrowed as I went, trees crowding close like they were whispering to each other. When I finally saw the Miller house, it looked worse than I remembered. Half-collapsed porch, roof caved in, a single upstairs window glowing faintly against the dark. When Kevin opened the door, a wave of musty air hit me. Mold, damp wood, something sour underneath. He'd set up a mattress on the floor, 2 folding chairs, and a lantern for light. "Welcome to Casa Creepy," he said with a laugh, handing me a beer. I tried to smile, but the place unsettled me. The air felt thick and stale, and every creak in the floorboard sounded like footsteps just one room away. Peeling wallpaper curled down the walls in long yellow strips. Somewhere deep in the house, water dripped rhythmically, like a slow clock. "So what's really going on, Kev?" I asked once we sat down. "You hiding from someone?" He looked at me steadily. "Not someone," he said softly. "Something?" I waited for the punchline. None came. "You remember when we were kids?" he went on, voice trembling a little. "And we used to talk about the shadows in the woods?" "Yeah," I said, half laughing. "Like campfire bullshit. Ghost stories. They weren't stories. Kevin's eyes gleamed in the lantern light. They were real, and they've been following me. I shifted in my seat, uneasy. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," he whispered. "You'll see. Just stay here tonight. You'll see I'm not lying." I wanted to tell him he was full of shit, but the look in his eyes, the raw fear behind the smirk, made the words die in my throat. Around midnight, I started hearing it. At first, it was just a faint tapping at the windows, barely audible over the crickets outside. Kevin froze. His face drained of color. He put a finger to his lips. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, then turned into slow, dragging footsteps circling the house. "Probably raccoons," I whispered, forcing a laugh that didn't sound like me. "Or deer." "Shh." Kevin's voice cracked. Then came the whispering. It was faint, like someone murmuring through the walls. Words I couldn't make out. Not English, not anything I recognized. My skin went cold. Kevin grabbed my arm, his hand trembling. "They found me," he muttered. "I told you." I shot up, heart hammering. "Who the hell is out there?" Kevin shook his head violently. "Not who, what?" The whispering moved closer, to the front door. Then silence. The silence was worse than the sound. The lantern flickered once, twice, and died. I swear to God, in that pitch-dark moment, something brushed my shoulder. Cold, weightless, human. Kevin screamed. I fumbled for my phone, hands slick with sweat, finally getting the flashlight on. The beam sliced through the dark, and Kevin was gone. The door was still locked from the inside. No footsteps, no running, no sound at all, except my own ragged breathing and the faint mist of it hanging in the air, even though it was June. I called his name until my throat felt raw. Searched every room, every closet, even the basement, where the stench of decay was so strong it made my eyes water. Nothing. When dawn finally broke, I drove straight to the sheriff's office. My voice shook as I told them everything, the shadows, the sounds, how Kevin just vanished. They searched the house, the woods, the road. No trace of him. It was like he'd never been there at all. The only thing they found was his wallet, lying neatly on the mattress, his ID still inside. The sheriff gave me a look that said he'd already made up his mind. "You sure you didn't imagine it? Maybe too much beer?" I swore I hadn't. I swore until my throat ached. But the more I talked, the less they believed me. That was 3 years ago. Kevin's never been found. No missing person report, no family, no record. It's like his whole life got erased. But sometimes when I'm driving home late at night, I see him, standing by the side of the road, pale, those same tired eyes watching me pass. And every single time I glance in the rearview mirror, there's a second shadow sitting in the back seat. I never thought an old friend of mine would nearly ruin my life. It started out so normal, so harmless, that even now part of me still can't believe how far it all spiraled. I keep asking myself, should I have seen it coming? Should I have walked away sooner? Maybe. Probably. But back then, all I knew was that I didn't want to abandon someone who didn't have many people left in his corner. His name was Brian Calloway. We met when I was 19. He was a year younger. We ran with the same small-town crew, dollar movies on Tuesday nights, Waffle House after midnight, wasting entire weekends on PlayStation marathons with cold pizza and cheap beer. He was quiet, funny in that dry, blink-and-you'll-miss-it way, and always down to hang out. Honestly, he felt like the kind of guy you wanted in your circle, loyal, dependable, never flaked on plans. But Brian had his quirks. He didn't have many friends outside of me, and depression clung to him like smoke. He didn't date much either, not from lack of trying. He was just awkward. The kind of awkward that made women glance at the exit mid-conversation. I felt for him. Loneliness had teeth, and I knew how they bit. One night at the diner, sitting across from him over greasy hash browns and bottomless coffee, I made a mistake I still regret. I brought up the paranormal. You ever look into near-death experiences? I asked, scrolling through YouTube on my phone. Some of these stories are insane. That was the hook, and Brian bit hard. At first it was harmless. Ghost stories, UFOs, urban legends, conspiracy stuff that made 2 a.m. car rides feel like campfire sessions. But little by little, it became all he wanted to talk about. He'd derail conversations, loop everything back to it. Didn't matter what we started with. He'd find a way to make it about the other side. His whole personality started dissolving into it. Still, I told myself, he's just passionate. It's a phase. Everyone has phases. I didn't know then that his phase was the start of something darker. Things shifted when Brian discovered DMT. He called me one night, voice shaking with excitement. "Dude, you ever heard of DMT?" "Yeah," I said cautiously. "That's that spirit molecule thing, right?" "Exactly, bro. I tried it," he said, lowering his voice even though he was alone. "I saw this thing, like a goddamn living fractal. It talked to me, told me I was chosen." I laughed, uneasy. "You sure it wasn't just the drugs?" But Brian was already gone. Within weeks, he was smoking DMT nearly every day, then several times a day. He'd talk about traveling to other realms, meeting entities, learning ancient truths. I tried to keep him grounded, but it was like holding sand in my hands. He just kept slipping away. He'd text me things like, "I'm the reincarnation of an Egyptian king. There are hieroglyphics hidden in street signs. The gods won't let me die until I finish my mission." I wanted to tell him he sounded insane, but he was still my friend, and he had nobody else. His family had written him off as the black sheep. The only one who still checked on him was his younger brother Kyle, barely out of high school. One night, I messaged Kyle on Facebook. "Hey man, I think Brian really needs help. He's not himself. Maybe try to talk him into seeing somebody." Kyle just sent a thumbs up emoji. I doubted he understood how deep Brian's delusion had gone. About a month later, my girlfriend Rachel suggested we meet Brian for a walk at Pine Creek Park. "I don't know, Ra," I muttered, lacing my sneakers. "He's been acting way too weird lately." "Come on," she said, tying her hair into a ponytail. "He's your friend. We'll hang out for an hour, grab food after. It'll be fine." I reluctantly agreed. Brian was already waiting when we arrived, sitting on a trail bench beneath a dying oak. His eyes lit up when he saw us, but instead of waving, he reached into his jacket and pulled something out. A hunting knife. He flipped it idly in his hand, the blade catching the afternoon sunlight, flashing once, bright and cold. "Don't freak out," he said quickly the moment he saw our faces, voice too bright, like he was trying to smooth a crease in the air. "I use it for rituals. Keeps the bad thoughts away." Rachel threw me a look. One of those tiny, precise looks that asks without words if I wanted to throw up or bolt. I forced a laugh that came out thin. "Cool, man. Maybe keep it in the sheath while we walk?" I offered, clumsy. He didn't listen. The whole hike he brandished that knife like a prop in whatever private theater he was rehearsing in. He'd tell a story and punctuate it with a flip of the blade. Sometimes he'd mime stabbing motions into his palm as if reminding himself he was alive. The metal flashed in the sunlight, and every time it did, Rachel's fingers around mine tightened like a band. "Just keep walking," I whispered into her ear, my breath short. "Don't make a scene." Inside my chest was a drum. I wanted to scream. I wanted to yank it out of his hand and throw it into the creek. Instead, I kept my feet moving and counted the rhythm of my heart until it steadied to a lie. When we got back to the parking lot, Rachel, God bless her optimism, chirped like nothing had the power to get under her skin. "Let's grab lunch together." Her smile was all sunlight and automatic good intentions. I wanted to shake her until she stopped being so naive. My eyes begged her, please no, but she either didn't see or chose not to. So we piled into my old Honda, me at the wheel, Rachel in the passenger seat, Brian in the back like some uncanny echo of the old guy I used to know. We crawled through downtown traffic, the world a slow parade of honking and people in jackets, when a soft, deliberate sound drifted from the back. The click of a seatbelt, the whisper of a zipper, the awful, intimate rasp of skin on skin. My stomach dropped so hard I thought I might pass out. No, I mouthed to myself, like a prayer or a command. I checked the rear view. The sight seared into me. Brian, pants halfway down, bent forward, doing something obscene that had no place in my car. My hands clenched the wheel until my knuckles hurt. Every part of my body screamed, shout, stop the car, wrench open the door, but the image of that knife in his jacket pocket sat at the center of my fear like a fulcrum. I stayed silent because the thought of what he might do with that blade if startled made silence the safer bet. Rachel prattled on beside me, blissfully unaware, recounting some office drama with the kind of detail that used to lull me. I nodded when she expected it, mouth dry, praying she wouldn't turn to look behind. She ducked out in the restaurant parking lot to grab food, leaving me alone in the car with the hum of the engine and the smell of stale leather. The silence felt thick and rotten. I pretended to scroll my phone, but watched him with the precise, tired attention of someone trying to catch a familiar animal before it bolts. When she returned, I forced a smile and said in a voice that I tried to keep casual, "I'm tired. Let's just go home." My throat felt tight as a noose. On the drive back to the park, I tried to breathe like a normal person, to unsurge my pulse, to erase the image in my mind. But the evening hadn't finished. We pulled into the lot where his battered sedan sat, oil-stained, a little tired at the edges. "All right, man," I said, forcing calm into each syllable. "This is you." He didn't move. He just sat there with his eyes fixed on some private horizon, the kind of look that belonged to someone who'd slipped the map and was trying not to panic at being lost. "Yo," I said sharper, a gear shift in my voice. "Time to head out." He opened the door at last, and relief warmed my chest. Not enough to breathe easy, but enough to think maybe we'd crossed the worst. Then he stepped toward Rachel's side of the car and my stomach punched itself into my spine. He reached into his bag and, God, pulled out a gun. A black 9mm that looked too ordinary for the terror it carried. The sight of that cold, small shape turned my blood to ice. Rachel froze mid-step, her plastic bag of takeout forgotten, eyes blown wide. Something hot and white rushed through me, anger, fear, a clarity sharpened by adrenaline. I threw my door open and stalked toward him before my better judgment could talk me down. "What the hell are you doing, Brian?" I barked. He didn't answer. His hands trembled, tears cutting tracks down his cheeks, his gaze unfocused like someone watching a scene through fog. "Get in your car," I ordered, my voice shaking despite the force I tried to squeeze into it. "Go home, right now." He stood there a long, awful second, clutching the gun like it granted him weight. Then, wordless, he turned, slid into his car, and drove off. The engine's retreat felt like a verdict. I exhaled so hard I nearly collapsed against the Honda's hood. Rachel whispered, small and certain, "We're never seeing him again." "No," I said, and the word was final. I cut him off, blocked his number, ignored Facebook messages that multiplied like bad dreams. Sometimes the messages found me anyway. Strange numbers, fractured sentences. "The gods told me you're betraying me. The pyramids are opening. Don't ignore your destiny." I deleted them the way you scrape mold from bread, briskly, with a little nausea. Months later, the gut quiet came, the one that doesn't leave you until you act. Check on him. "Is he safe?" I messaged Kyle. "Listen," I wrote. "I don't know if he still has a gun. If he does, you need to take it. He's not stable." Kyle's reply was short. "I already did. Thanks for the heads up." For the first time in a while, I felt something like relief. Thin and fragile but real, until the phone woke me in the dark. It was 17 a.m. The number was from Illinois. I almost let it go to voicemail but answered on a threadbare instinct. "Hello?" I said. A deep voice answered, formal and flat. "This is Detective Harris with the Joliet Police Department. Do you know a Brian Calloway?" My chest emptied. "Yeah." My voice sounded far away from my body. Why? There was a pause long enough to count, and then the detective delivered the kind of sentence that replays forever. Your friend was involved in a homicide tonight. He stabbed a man inside an Egyptian museum. The room swam. I sat so still I could feel the frame of the chair through my skin. Sweat popped along my scalp. My hands shook without me noticing. The detective asked me questions. Dates, last known locations, anything that might help, and I answered. But the words were thin ghosts. Between each response, a single, relentless thought hammered. That could have been us. That could have been Rachel. I have never spoken to Brian since. I have no plan to. But sometimes at 2 a.m., guilt creeps into me like fog. I dream he's crouched in the back seat of my car, knife in hand, eyes glassy and unblinking. Other nights I see him standing at Rachel's porch, a gun heavy in his palm. Waking up, I replay the choices. I ask myself the old, useless questions. Should I have seen it coming? Should I have done more? A small, accusing voice whispers, "You should have helped him." Then another voice, practical, selfish, honest, answers back, steadier, "You're lucky you got away alive." I never thought a single childhood memory would haunt me the way this one does. I'm in my 30s now, 2 kids of my own. But every time I drop them off at school, that same faint chill brushes the back of my neck. It's subtle, just a tingle, but it sends me straight back to one spring afternoon when I was 5 years old, standing on the cracked blacktop of Ridgeview Elementary, watching something I didn't fully understand until much later. Back then, my world was small. School, my parents, the neighborhood kids, and my best friend Aaron. He was 6, a wiry little spark of energy who always seemed to have better toys, cooler sneakers, and braver ideas. If I was the careful one, Aaron was the kind who'd test how far you could lean off the monkey bars before gravity decided for you. He'd grin at danger like it was a game, laugh when the teacher yelled, and somehow always dodge trouble at the last second. Ridgeview Elementary sat in a quiet Midwestern town, a low brick L-shaped building where paint peeled around the windows and the swings squeaked like old hinges. The long side held the classrooms. The short wing was mostly forgotten. Dusty art rooms, unused storage. The road curved around the school, and parents lined it in their cars at pickup time, the engines humming softly under the chatter of kids. Recess was chaos. Hundreds of us scattered across the asphalt while teachers clutched styrofoam coffee cups, half watching, half talking. Usually recess was the best part of my day, but not that day. That day, I was furious. Aaron had stolen my colored pens. It sounds small now, almost laughable, but when you're 5, those things matter. My mom had bought me that 12-pack, bright, smooth, perfect. I kept them in my desk like treasure, lined up by color. During math, I looked over and saw Aaron using them, drawing some dumb cartoon on his worksheet with my favorite turquoise pen. "Those are mine," I whispered across the aisle. He didn't even look guilty, just smirked. Not anymore. Heat burned up my neck. He always got away with everything because he was older, faster, cooler, but not this time. This time I'd make sure he didn't. So when the bell rang for recess, I followed him out with revenge bubbling in my chest. The air smelled like warm tar and grass, and the chatter of kids blurred into a single roar. I scanned the yard until I spotted him wandering off, toward the far side of the building, the short, unused wing. I frowned. No one ever went that way. Maybe he was sneaking off to climb the fence or dig around for lost baseballs. Whatever it was, I wasn't letting him have fun after stealing from me. I trailed him quietly, sneakers scuffing against the cracked asphalt. The teachers were busy laughing near the swings. No one was watching. When I rounded the corner, I stopped dead. Aaron wasn't alone. A car was idling at the edge of the lot, maybe 20 feet away. A beat-up blue sedan with dull paint that flaked under the sun. The passenger door hung open. Inside sat a man I didn't recognize. Greasy hair, a dirty baseball cap pulled low, eyes hidden in shadow. He leaned over the seat, holding something out. Candy. That's what it looked like to me. One of those shiny, plastic-wrapped bars that caught the light like foil treasure. "Hey, buddy," the man said, his voice low and strange, too soft, too friendly. "You want some? Got a whole box right here." Aaron froze at the curb, his small hands twitching at his sides. He tilted his head, curious, unsure. I was 2 yards away, pressed against the brick corner, watching. The air felt heavy suddenly, the faint hum of the car engine mixing with the squeals of kids far behind us. I didn't understand danger back then. Not really. I wasn't thinking about kidnappers or bad men. I was just confused. Why didn't he get out and hand Aaron the candy? Why stay in the car like that, half hidden, like he didn't want anyone else to see? Instead, the man kept motioning for Aaron to come closer, his arm extending out the open window in short, beckoning waves. "Come on," he coaxed, his tone syrupy, false. "Hop in real quick. I'll give you more." Aaron took another step forward, shoes crunching on the gravel. Something sharp and mean twisted in my little kid brain. This was my chance. I could ruin it for him, get him back for stealing my pens, make him mad the way he'd made me mad. I stuck out my tongue and shouted, loud enough for the teachers to hear. "Hey, Mrs. Turner's calling you. She said if you don't come back right now, she's gonna tell your mom you went outside the schoolyard." Aaron spun around, scowling. "Shut up, Liam," he hissed. His face was red, eyes blazing. "You're just jealous 'cause he likes me and not you." I grinned, smug and childish, feeling that tiny thrill of victory. "Teacher, teacher," I sang out in a high, taunting voice, drawing out the words. That's when I noticed it, the sudden, strange motion from the car. The man in the passenger seat slammed the door shut with a heavy thud. A second later, another man, one I hadn't seen before, sat up behind the wheel. He grabbed the gear shift hard and the sedan jolted backward, tires spitting gravel. Aaron whipped around just in time to see it peel away, disappearing down the road. His face contorted, not with fear, just pure childish rage. "You scared him away," he shouted, fists clenched so tight his knuckles went white. "He was giving me cookies. You ruined it." I burst out laughing, breathless, triumphant, my 5-year-old brain too caught up in revenge to understand what had just happened. "Cry, baby," I taunted, sticking my tongue out again. "You wanted cookies? Go cry to your mommy." Aaron's fury exploded. "I'm gonna hit you," he yelled, lunging toward me. I squealed and took off across the blacktop, sneakers slapping the pavement, heart pounding with the thrill of the chase. His breath was hot behind me, his voice breaking with tears and anger. That's when Mrs. Turner caught us. She stepped in front of me, her sunglasses sliding down her nose, her voice sharp as a whistle. "Boys! Enough!" she barked. "What on earth is going on?" Aaron's chest was heaving. "He scared off the candy man," he blurted, tears welling in his eyes. "He was giving me cookies and Liam scared him off." Mrs. Turner froze. Her whole face changed, color draining, lips tightening. "What did you just say?" she asked, her tone low and shaking. Aaron sniffled. "The candy man," he said again, pointing toward the lot. She didn't waste a single second. She raised her whistle to her mouth and blew, one piercing, shattering note that cut through every voice on the playground. "Everybody inside," she shouted, waving her arms. "Now, line up, move." Confused murmurs rippled through the kids. A few groaned, thinking recess was over early. I thought maybe she was mad at me for tattling. But as she herded us toward the doors, her face stayed tight, eyes darting, mouth drawn in a way I'd never seen before. Not angry, scared. Inside, she pulled down the classroom blinds, the light dimming into an eerie gray. We all sat cross-legged on the rug while she stood at the front, voice trembling just slightly. "Listen carefully," she said. "If anyone you don't know ever talks to you outside this school, you do not go with them. You do not take candy or cookies or toys or anything. You run. You find a teacher. Do you understand?" A quiet chorus of yes drifted through the room. That night, our parents got phone calls. The next morning, there was a meeting in the gym. I remember sitting beside my mom on the metal bleachers, her hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. She didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead at the principal, who was pale and sweating, his voice tight as he spoke. After that, everything changed. Ridgeview Elementary got a security guard stationed near the lot. No one was allowed near that short wing anymore. The teachers kept their eyes on us like hawks. At the time, I didn't really understand why. I thought it was because of my prank, my little act of payback over some stolen pens. But as I got older, the memory warped into something colder, heavier. I started to see what had almost happened, how close Aaron had been to stepping into that car, how close he'd come to never coming back, and the part that still rattles me, the part that crawls up my spine every morning I drop my kids off, is how easily it could have been me, all because of a pack of colored pens. I never thought moving out of my parents' house would bring both the freedom I'd always dreamed of and the kind of fear I never imagined. I was 19 when I left my small hometown in North Carolina and moved to a mid-sized city in Virginia. It wasn't far, just a few hours' drive, but it felt like stepping through a doorway into a different life. I rented a modest 2-bedroom apartment near campus, splitting the rent with my cousin Illa. She was in her final year of nursing school. I was just starting pre-law. Growing up, I was never the kind of person with a crowd of friends. I mostly kept to myself. But there was always one person who seemed permanently glued to my side: Adrian. We'd been friends since middle school, the kind of inseparable duo people assumed would grow old together. He wasn't a great student, and he definitely wasn't the kindest soul. But when you're a kid, you don't look for warning signs. We'd skip class, laugh until our sides hurt, trade secrets we swore no one else would ever hear. By high school, though, something in him started to twist. He became bitter, unpredictable. He'd snap at teachers for no reason, pick fights over the smallest things. With girls, he had this jealous, possessive streak that made people uncomfortable. I kept brushing it off as teenage mood swings, but deep down, I knew it wasn't just that. When he confessed his feelings for me junior year, I froze. I didn't feel that way about him, and when I said no, something changed in his face, like a mask slipping. His jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed, and he said it so quietly, I almost didn't catch it. "You'll realize one day, you're mine, no matter how long it takes." I laughed it off then, because what else do you do? But 3 years later, I wasn't laughing. Life in Virginia started off good. My classes were demanding but manageable. The city was busy enough to feel alive, not suffocating. Illa and I lived a short walk from a little neighborhood bar where I picked up a part-time bartending job. It wasn't one of those rowdy college hangouts, just a dim, cozy place where regulars drank cheap beer and talked about work or weather. I liked it there. Life felt stable, safe. Until Adrian found me again. I don't even remember ever telling him I was moving here. But one evening, a few months into the semester, I was walking home from the bar around 11:30. The streets were quiet, that eerie kind of silence that only exists between streetlights. Then I saw him. Or at least I think I did. Someone was standing across the street, half hidden under a street lamp. Tall, broad shoulders, hood pulled low. My chest went tight. "Stop it," I muttered under my breath. "You're being paranoid." But paranoia has a way of sticking to your ribs. A week later, I got the first message. Not online, not by phone. A handwritten note slipped under our apartment door. "You still look the same. I've missed you." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The handwriting was uneven, rushed, but familiar enough to make my stomach twist. "Illa!" I yelled, holding the paper out like it was radioactive. She appeared in the hallway, hair in a messy bun, textbook in hand. "What? What's wrong?" I handed her the note. My fingers were trembling. She read it, brow furrowed. Probably some creep in the building, she said, trying to sound calm. We'll tell the landlord. Maybe file a report. No. My voice cracked. It's Adrian. Her eyes flicked up fast. She knew that name. She knew the stories. Are you sure? I know his handwriting. He used to pass me notes in class. It's him. She put a cautious hand on my shoulder. Then we call someone. Landlord, cops, whatever it takes. But I just stood there, the note still dangling from my fingers, my pulse roaring in my ears. It had been years, and part of me didn't want to believe it was really him. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was connecting dots that weren't there. That's what I told myself as I crumpled the note and tossed it into the trash. But things didn't stop. They got worse. Some nights when I came home late, I'd hear footsteps behind me. Not rushed or careless, steady, deliberate, the kind that match your pace just enough to make you doubt your own ears. Every time I turned around, the sidewalk was empty, the streetlights humming softly over wet pavement. Once, around 2 in the morning, I woke to the faint sound of someone jiggling the handle of our balcony door. I froze under the covers, staring at the glass, the faint city light reflecting off it. My heart was pounding so hard I swore it would wake Illa. After a few seconds, the sound stopped. But I didn't sleep again that night. I tried convincing myself it was nothing, city noises, drunk neighbors, the wind, but my body knew better. My nerves buzzed like live wires. Then came the night it all shattered. It was late January, one of those bitter nights where the wind seeps through every crack in the window frame and makes the walls creak. Illa was on her hospital night shift, so I was alone. I curled up on the couch with a blanket, watching some mindless show to drown out the silence. The TV glow flickered against the walls, casting strange shadows that moved when I blinked. At 2:45 a.m., I heard it, a scraping sound at the balcony window. I muted the TV. My heart stuttered. It came again, slow and deliberate, metal against glass. I held my breath and crept toward the sliding door, each step measured and silent. And then I saw him. Adrian. He was crouched on the balcony, a small glass cutter in his hand, dragging it along the corner of the pane. His hood was up, his breath fogging the cold air. He looked up just enough for our eyes to meet. I froze, terror locking me in place. He grinned. That same grin from high school, the one he'd wear after breaking rules and getting away with it. He mouthed the words through the glass. Told you. That snapped me out of it. I bolted for my room, slammed the door, and grabbed my phone. My fingers shook so badly I nearly dropped it. 911, I whispered when the operator answered. Someone's breaking into my apartment. He's on the balcony. Please hurry. I locked my bedroom door and remembered what my uncle had said when I moved out. Keep a bat in the closet, just in case. I grabbed it, gripping it so hard my knuckles went white. Then came the sound. Crack, glass breaking. My blood went cold. Footsteps followed, slow and heavy across the living room floor. Sarah. His voice was low, sing-song, dragging my name out like a taunt. You knew I'd find you. My chest heaved. Stay calm, I whispered to myself. Police are coming. Just hold on. The doorknob rattled. Then a single, hard pound. Come on, he said. Don't play games. We've known each other too long for this. Tears blurred my vision. I pressed myself against the wall beside the door, bat raised, heart hammering so violently I felt sick. I don't want to hurt you, he continued. But you made me look like a fool. You think you can just walk away? Move states? Live your little life without me? The pounding grew louder, angrier. The door groaned under the hits, and then sirens, faint at first, then closer. Adrian stopped. You called them? His voice snapped, the sweetness gone. You think they'll save you? No one's saving you from me. He kicked the door, once, twice, hard enough to make the hinges scream. I braced myself for the next hit, but instead, I heard it. Shouts, boots pounding, chaos. Police, put your hands where we can see them. The pounding stopped. Footsteps rushed toward the balcony, then crashing, shouting, the metallic clatter of cuffs. I stayed frozen, bat still in hand, until someone banged on my door again. "Ma'am, it's the police, you're safe." When they opened the door, I was trembling, breathless, clutching the bat like a lifeline. Adrian hadn't run. He never would. His pride wouldn't allow it. He'd rather be caught than humiliated. They tackled him on the balcony, glass shards glittering around his knees. In his pockets they found more notes, all written in that same jagged scrawl. "You'll be mine." It's been 6 years since that night. Adrian was eventually transferred to a psychiatric facility after being deemed unstable. I'm still in Virginia, finishing law school, pretending to have moved on. But sometimes, walking home after dark, I swear I still hear footsteps behind me. Measured, steady, always just one pace behind. And when I close my eyes, I still see that grin, lit by the blue flash of police lights, framed by broken glass.